Hello folks, this unboxing video is taking a look at Eldritch Horror. Yeah, that was rubbish. Sorry about that. But this one's going to be a beast, because if anybody remembers Arkham Horror, that was effectively Component Central, and that was just the base game, let alone when you stuck all the expansions in there. Well, Eldritch Horror is no different. There's a lot of stuff in this game, so there's going to be quite a bit for me to get through. So I'd best make a start now. Now, while I take off the shrink wrap, I'll just explain. This is effectively a sister game to Arkham Horror. Rather than taking place in one city, it takes place across the entire globe. But it works in very much the same way. You have a bunch of investigators who have to stop an evil ancient one from appearing, and you have to get clue tokens and go on missions and encounters to basically unfold a really immersive story, but eventually to banish the ancient one from ever appearing. And over the way you'll collect items, you'll have encounters, you'll get in with the wrong crowds, you'll have adventures, and you'll fight monsters and go into otherworld gates. It's really great, really immersive, and I'm going to keep this game along with my Arkham collection to see how it fares in the long run, because there is the massive dilemma over whether this replaces Arkham, and I'll probably get onto that in a review in the long run. But for now, let's take a look at this box. Now, I mean, I will stress, this is a standard size box, but it's a heavyish one for a standard size box. So there's a lot in here. But being Fantasy Flight, that's the logo for a quality box. Feels very nice artwork. Okay, that's just the standard. We are Fantasy Flight, buy our stuff. Cosmic Encounter there on the previous page, which I like. Civilization was a reasonably good game. I'm thinking of reviewing it at some point, so bear with me on that. And Netrunner, I've only played it once, but I enjoyed it. And Descent 2.0, I played that on Wednesday actually, and I was quite impressed by it. So that's just standard Fantasy Flight flair. The rulebook. Now, you'll be surprised to see it's not actually that thick, especially considering how complicated the Arkham Horror game is. And that's because this game is more streamlined. There's still a lot going on. I mean, look at this. This page is devoted entirely to components. And there's a lot of components. Yeah. But even with a lot of components, the game is generally streamlined to make things a bit more manageable and to have less fiddly rules. And even with the fairly complex setup diagram there, I can tell you that this one is easier to set up and get going and pack away. But don't think that this is a short game by any means. It still takes a while to get through on your first few tries. But rulebook looks very clear and concise. All the phases are set out individually with the symbols, with clear instructions. It would be nice to have had a few more pictures in there, maybe a few more diagrams, but I suppose they've covered the bases pretty well. We'll soon find out how good the rulebook is when I get round to going through my first solo playthrough. Or failing that, I might even teach this to the people I'm entertaining on Sunday with the co-op day that I'm doing. But I reckon this might be a little bit above their station. I don't know, I might be impressed. But they are relatively new gamers, so I'm not holding my hopes. Reference guide. Haven't seen this before, we didn't have that before. I see, it's effectively a glossary of all the types. So let's say Ancient One here, for example. The Ancient One sheet chosen during setup determines the Ancient One for the entire game. Illustration is featured on the back of the special guide. Yeah, so basically it's almost like a glossary. It explains each term as to what it is. Delayed, for example, a condition you can have when an investigator becomes delayed. His investigator token, cannot perform any actions, that kind of thing. So that's what this is, and it effectively goes through the entire bit. I apologise if this camera is not focusing on the text that clearly, but essentially what you need to know is that this is a reference for every terminology in the game and frequently asked questions. So I suppose couple this with the rulebook, there is a fair amount to take in, but still it is simpler than Arkham Horror, I promise you that. Now here's where Fantasy Flight games really shine with a lot of their stuff. Their punch-out board components. Look at these things. I mean, there's 3 boards worth of stuff in here, and on this front board alone you've got all these chunky tickets. You've got the bonuses to your stats that you can get. You've got a couple of the brain, sanity and heart tokens there, and look at the artwork on these. These are just the character stands. Look at the gorgeous artwork on there. They're really nice on these. You gotta give kudos to Fantasy Flight. They are one of the best when it comes to components. They're also one of the most annoying when it comes to 1,000,000 expansions, but, you know, to each their own. But look, nice there. I really don't get why this is out there. Has anybody ever used this proof of purchase thing? I've never used it before, but I'd like to know if anybody has ever used this to great effect. Oh well, getting slightly off topic. And oh, on the back, here we go. We have got some of the world gates. Arkham, Buenos Aires. The symbol on the bottom of the gate represents what appears on an Omen track, which is a slight difference to Arkham Horror, where depending on when the Doom track goes into effect or what Mythos cards come out, the symbol on the card dictates whether monsters will spawn out of these gates, which is quite a nice mechanic. More sanity tokens, more heart tokens. Rubbish heartbeat there. And Eldritch tokens, which is just basically lots of lovely tentacles. Because anybody who's played any Cthulhu theme game knows that it's all about the tentacles. Ah well, nice sturdy cardboard there. Very impressive so far. Now we come to the board, which for some bizarre reason is shrink wrapped. Not sure why that is. Okay, give me 1 second. Here we go. Right, the board. Sorry about that. Now, I might have to do some jiggery-pokery with the camera here in order for you to see the entire board. But for now, you can see that you have the routes along the board. The locations are done by a very cool looking sort of like pin-up board style picture frame. And you've got the same thing for various locations in the game. Let's see if I can... And there, London, Rome. Now, I think I'm going to have to shift the camera in a second in order to show you the whole board when it's laid out, because just to give you a bit of background, the way that this camera is set up is that I have a Joby tripod and it is attached to my chair, and I have to reach around that chair to fiddle with the box. I don't have a massive tripod set up, so that's the best I can do. But here we go. Let's try and move the camera and see if I can just show you a bit more of the board there. There you see, across the whole world this goes now. It's not just done in Arkham. And again, you've got the nice, let's zoom in on there. You've got the location Rome there with various things you can do on each. You've got the pyramids there, Arkham over here, and basically the whole board is this, but you've also got down to the left here, you've also got the paths and spaces. Basically that just tells you what each symbol is, and down here you've also got the bank loans and what's called the reserve, which is basically where all the items come out that you can buy during the course of the game. Now if I just study this a second and zoom back out, there we go, nicely done. So the board is very colourful, it is very sturdy, very good thick cardboard, and just like the normal Arkham board, it does look nice. Personally, I prefer the look of the, I don't know which one, saying that, the old one is quite colourful, it is sturdy, and it does look very dark and dismal, whereas this one looks more sort of light. But it's done very nicely in the sort of periodic expedition style across the board. You know, you got those pin-up, see, you can see the little pin there? So it's effectively like those old boards you see in films where they're plotting the route, a bit like Indiana Jones films. And I must admit, when we play this game, the amount of times the Indiana Jones music and cracks come up is just unwieldy. But that's the board, and it is a big one. And certainly, I should just mention the price tag of this game, actually. The price tag of this game is only around usually the maximum you should be paying for this game is about £45. If you're very fortunate, you can get it for 40 quid, maybe slightly less, depending on discounts and who you know and that. So, you know, for that sort of money, that's pretty good. But now, let's bring the camera a little bit further down. There we go. And see the box. Now, annoyingly, Fantasy Flight, seriously, what is it with you and these sort of inserts, which are just like 2 bits at the side and a space in the middle? I don't get these inserts. They don't serve much purpose, and I tend to chuck these away, really. Can't you invest in a better insert? I don't know. But I'm getting off topic. It's not too bad. It's got a picture on it, but yeah, the insert is not going to serve much of a purpose. I'm probably going to end up chucking this so I can bag up all the components and bits and bobs, because think about it. There's not much space left in there with the cards in the bagged up state. What do you think it's going to be like when I get this in there? So yeah, I think the insert's going to be gone. But let's get a look at everything else. So we've got some very basic dice and the character stands. Now I have some Arkham Horror dice, so I'll probably be replacing those. Would be nice if they put them in the base game, but well, never mind. We have small cards here, and these small cards are all sorts. Let's get a few of these out just to show you. Right, here we go. So, icon reference, this basically is just to tell you how many spawned gates there are, how many monster surges there are, depending on how many players are in the game. It does go from 1 to 8. Solo play with this game is quite fun. 8 is just, I can imagine that is suicide, and I can imagine even 6 is suicide. I think 5 is the absolute max you should ever play an Arkham game with, and I think 4 is a good sweet spot. 3 or 4 players, very good. If you've only got 2 of you, take a couple of investigators each, otherwise it's not as good, but, you know, the reference cards help you out on that front. You've then got various items that you can get. So here we got the lightning gun, sword of Saint Jerome, the Vermis Mysterious, is that how you pronounce it? Not sure. Necronomicon, and no, this isn't, you know, yes, okay, we did come up with the Evil Dead crack when that came up, but it was very useful for us in our first game. So, various other things, Flute of the Out of God, Ruby of I mean, I really cannot pronounce half of the bizarre names in the Arkham series. And you can also get allies as well, so this is the Cat Burglar, who was the most useless ally I ever picked up in my first game. I thought, yes, this is brilliant, I'm the sailor, and I'm going to deposit the Cat Burglar around, she's going to get to me lots of cool items and that really easily. Notice it says on the 1, discard this card. First time I rolled her, because dice hate me, I got a 1. So basically, the Cat Burglar jumped off my boat and drowned. So, world's most useless Cat Burglar. But Arcane Scholar, PA, Private Investigator, Hired Muscle, Vatican Missionary, that's quite a cool one to get, Lodge Researcher. So there's various allies and various items. Yes, Indiana Jones Bullwhip, 3D8 Resolver. And you can see these are done in the same sort of periodic style as the board was. And, you know, they are quite thin. They are thin cards, so expect a bit of wear and tear over time, but trust me, this is one of the sort of games that you do not sleeve. Not unless you have a Death Wish, because there's a lot of cards in here, and I don't even know if there are sleeves that's small. You know, if there are, then fair enough, but I just think it'd be a waste of money to sleeve every single card here. They're saying that I am sleeving every single card in Marvel Legendary, so I suppose I can't talk. But still, I don't know, this is one of those games, because you don't shuffle them as much as you do in things like Marvel, because Marvel was a deck building game. Here, you set out the deck, and some of these cards might not even get used for the entire game, so it's not quite as bad. But they're alright. 45 Automatic, Carbine Rifle, Double-Barreled Shotgun, Love a Shotgun, Holy Cross, Whiskey, well, I don't know how useful that is. Lucky Rabbit's Foot, which for my female partner in the game that we were playing was not very lucky at all. And Puzzle Box, any Hellraiser references you want to note on that one? Wireless support. So basically all these things that you can buy from the reserve for money. Carrying on, we've got condition cards. That's what all these are. So you've got the Debt condition, the Dark Pact condition, Detained condition. Basically what these conditions are is that you essentially, if you, let's for example take the debt one, if you decide to take out a bank loan, then you have to draw one of these debt conditions, and for most of the time they don't actually require you to do anything, although this one does allow you to pass and discard the card. But that reckoning symbol there, when it appears on the Mythos card and it's drawn, then basically for this one an example, it means that some men have come to collect on the debt. Flip this card. And when you do, you flip it, you read out the text, and do what it says. Now in this case, hitmen have come after you, but they're different among all of them. I mean, those two are the same on that side, but that one, you got a debt collector. I won't go into the detail of those because I don't want to do spoilers for this game, because half of it is all about immersion. So, but you can imagine that there are loads of different ways that debt can sneak up and screw you over. The Dark Pact is another example of that, and Detained, back injury, leg injury, paranoia. The guy actually did the rules wrong who taught me this game first for a short while. You could only have one of these type of conditions at a time. but we didn't get that rule right. Apparently we were allowed to have multiples of the same one, and I ended up with 3 paranoias. I was the most paranoid sailor in the world, and not once did I have to flip these cards. I managed to resist the paranoia temptation throughout the entire game, but it was just quite funny that I was the most chronically paranoid sailor for a while until we realised we got the rule wrong. I really do advise reading the rules good. Hallucinations, cursed, blessed, and then we get on to spells, which are similar to the spells in Arkham, effectively. Rituals and spells, take an action, do something, flip the card. Although spells work a bit different in this game. Previously it was just roll the die and see if you pass it. Well, here you still have to roll the die and pass it, but then depending on how many successes you get, 0, 1, 2 plus, it has a different effect for the spell. And that's really cool. This is probably one of my favourite changes this game has, the way that spells are handled. But effectively there's a fair few spells here, although bearing in mind this is just a base game. Now when I say the base game and you don't need to worry, well, put it this way. Let me just grab the box a second, I'll show you what I mean. Right, here you go. See that logo there? Fantasy Flight. Whenever you see that logo on the box, that means you know that this game is guaranteed to have 1 million expansions. Think of how many Arkham Horror had. It released an expansion for the expansions. You can't beat that anywhere. Seriously, I mean, you know, that is a first. And traditionally, most of Fantasy Flight games all have extra expansions. So you know that this one's going to get expanded up the wazoo. And to be fair, it kind of needs it. But I'll go into that another time. Let's get a move on. So let's move on to the big cards. Now these 2 decks are mostly the same, so I won't go into both. But here we go. So, like the Arkham encounters, you have different encounters for different... well, actually, these aren't just encounters. These are also Ancient One cards. But you've got Expedition cards, which effectively gives you a little story. So, the summons a terrible blizzard to destroy you and your expedition. You have to survive the storm before you can continue, take a strength test, and then pass or fail. You get a different thing. You've also got the same thing for generic cities, sea and wilderness type locations, and you've got ones like this one which are other worlds, so Lost Carcosa for example. At an elaborate masquerade, you talk to decadent partygoers who are all manoeuvring to be declared as the proper heir to the crown. Test influence, pass or fail. So it all works in that sense. These Ancient One cards basically represent the mysteries that you have to solve in order to complete the game. There's usually 4 for each, and I think you have to complete 3 for each Ancient One. There's only 4 Ancient Ones, which is a bit of a shame. I would have liked there to have been more, but obviously this is going to get expanded, like I said, so it's not all bad. Cards, though, again, not the most thickest card in the world, so you may want to sleeve them, but it's up to you. But they are quite... They're nice linen finish cards, I think. You know, they feel really nice on the finger, and I don't think these will get wear and tear too often. And here we go, so Rayo Risen. You get certain encounter cards and clue cards that are specific for each Ancient One, which is quite a nice touch. The original Arkham, I have to admit, one of its flaws was that it didn't really reveal much about the Ancient Ones in general, whereas this one goes a bit more into the lore behind it. Oh well, carrying on. Here you got more Expedition cards, but more. You have the Mythos cards, so the symbols dictate whether you get gate spawns or whether conditions come into effect, that kind of thing. But all of them have got great text, very immersive, and then an event that tends to happen in the game. Carrying on, more Mythos cards, but you get Mythos cards that are unique to a particular Ancient One, or you just get or you get Mythos cards that are just literally generic Mythos cards. Carrying on. Location encounters. Now you've either got the generic city, wilderness and sea encounters, depending where you are on the board, or you've got Shanghai, Tokyo, Sydney, Shanghai, Tokyo, Sydney, London, Rome. But you've got the specific ones for cities, basically, and I'm not going to spoil them here, but effectively they are the story encounters that you have to read through whenever you go to those areas and have an encounter there. That's one of the great selling points of this game. And finally, just to wrap this up, because there's only so long this camera will record for, and I'm noticing there's a low battery symbol already. We have characters and ancient ones. Now there's only 4 ancient ones, but there will be more in the future. So you got Azathoth, who basically as soon as he decides he wants to come out, he nukes the entire world and you will die. Nice and simple. Yog-Sothoth, Shub-Niggurath, and the legendary Cthulhu. Ooh, tentacles. That sounded weird. But I must admit, I need to read up a bit more on the Arkham lore, because I wish I could give you a backstory onto all of these, but unfortunately I need my mate Jacob here to do that, who is the Arkham veteran when it comes to the backstory and lore. But I have got the Necronomicon book that a mate has lent me, and I'm hoping I could find some audiobooks for these stories as well, because I do tend to listen to audiobooks more rather than read, and you know, those will be really good if I can get those. But like I say, nice cool little pictures, and then on the back you've got basically when the world goes to pot, there is a potential chance to win, but basically if you fail to banish the ancient one and this has to flip over, life just became very difficult for you. But as you can see, very good artwork on these. I love this one in particular. But, you know, even that one's pretty cool. And of course, you can't beat Great Orc Cthulhu. So we've got the actress, the soldier, the astronomer, the sailor, Silas Smart, who I played last time, the spy. And they're all pretty cool. They've got their special actions, they've got their starting sanity and health, their starting skills. But the best thing is when you look on the back, it's got basically what they start with, where they start, a really cool backstory, and then even a story to read in case you go insane or die, which is quite cool. But again, I am not going to spoil anything here. I have not read these either. But again, you know, good cardboard. It bends, but you could laminate these if you want, but I don't see why you would need to. I think that's maybe going a bit far, but I do have a laminator, so maybe I will. I wouldn't rule it out. I have to see what luck everybody else has had with it. But that's the characters. So, as you can see, this comes with a lot of components, and they're all very good quality and great artwork across the board. The insert is a weak link, yes. I mean, what are these for? Hey, what's the point of the flap? I have no idea. But the box itself, really nice quality, very good artwork on the back. Sorry if this, oh, focus, there we go. Lovely artwork, and you can see when this game gets going, there's a lot going on, and I do recommend having a playthrough and keeping this to 5 or less players, probably 4 or less players if you can help it. I'd love to see an 8-player one in action. I just wouldn't like to be part of it, because I bet that would drag like crazy. But all in all, this is one great game. Whether it's going to replace Arkham Horror for me, I don't know. That's for the long term, and when I get around to a review, I will look into that in more detail, but it's going to need a lot of plays before I come to that decision. For now, I'm keeping both in the collection, and they're going to suit me just fine. So, Eldritch Horror, the next classic by Fantasy Flight Games. Thank you for listening. Sorry about that little hiccup earlier with the camera battery. I hope you enjoyed watching and enjoy playing games. I'll see you soon. Take care.